Hi everybody, I'm Elle and it's lovely to see you all back here again. This is the second video in a two-part mini-series covering this project, so if you haven't already watched the first video on how I do the character art, I'll have a link to that up above as well as in the description below. So, if you're a digital artist or have been following digital artists on social media over the past couple of years, you'll likely know who Rossdraws, known across his social media platforms as Rossdraws, already is. But for those of you who don't know, Ross is a digital artist from the United States who has a following of 1.4 million subscribers on YouTube and roughly about the same amount of followers on Instagram. Back in 2021, he hosted a digital art bootcamp over on his Patreon, which prompted the creation of the Digital Art Bootcamp website where, if you weren't a patron during the initial release, you can still take the lessons and gain access to any new content that he makes over there. Ross was one of the first digital artists that I followed when I started making digital art. He's well known for his unique, semi-realistic, with a little dash of anime portraits and character art, but something that I don't really often see talked about are his absolutely amazing background skills. So for this video, I wanted to study some of his backgrounds and try to paint my own. So the artwork that I've chosen to study is this one here. I think that it has a really nice graphic read to it, so it'll be easy to break down the shapes that make up the composition. So I didn't trace around all of the little details in the piece, I just simplified all of the shapes into mostly triangles and circles, and that works just fine. I turned it to black and white so that I could colour pick the mid-tone value of each of the shapes that I'd broken up, and then I just sort of used the lasso tool to freeform some shapes in and layered them on top of each other so that I could see how they all work together in the composition. I broke down a couple of his other background artworks in a similar sort of way, and it helped to make the whole process feel a lot less daunting. Another thing that I've really noticed about Ross and how he does backgrounds is that he tends to organise things in a way that create lines leading back to the focal point. So I've just traced over a couple of those and put a circle around the focal point. You can kind of see how he structures things in a way that bring attention to where he really wants you to be looking. And often that's where there's a character or some sort of action going on. And the last thing that I really want to draw attention to are the amount of blank spaces that he likes to leave in his compositions. There's usually one sort of bigger area where there's just not much going on, and I feel like that's really in contrast to where the focal point is, where there's often a lot of high detail. It just gives the pieces some breathing room, a place to rest your eyes. And then those lines that I highlighted before will just draw your eyes back into the focal point. So now that I've studied Ross's work a little bit, I want to see how much of that I can actually implement into drawing my own background. So yeah, here we go with that in 3, 2, 1. So the first thing that I did was I turned everything to black and white and just started airbrushing in a gradient for the sky in the background. Once I'd done that, I created a few new layers and just started making some triangular shapes that had sort of slopes leading back towards the character that I'd drawn. I also put in a circular shape that could be the sun, but it doesn't fit the lighting scenario, so I end up deleting it later on. After mucking around with the foreground a little bit and then just deciding to fix that a bit later, I start blocking in some shapes in the midground. I had these sort of ideas to put these glowing rocks in the middle of a field. I just muck around with the shapes a lot, and then I finally settle on a design that I think looks pleasing. After that, I used the colour balance tool to bring some colour to the black and white. You could definitely manually paint everything in, but if you're trying to do things a little bit quicker, colour balance is a really great tool to use. Once I'm happy with my colour choices, I start moving to a combination of actually physically painting things in and using colour correction tools and different kind of blending layers to kind of try to make something cohesive. When you draw the character first and leave the background until last, you haven't really developed them alongside each other, so integrating the two and not making it just look like two separate pieces stuck together can be a bit tricky. So some tips to help with that. Firstly, make sure that the lighting scenario for your character matches the lighting scenario in the background. If you've drawn the sun coming from one direction in the background but your character's being lit by the sun from another direction, it doesn't quite make sense. And the other tip is with the lighting, make sure that the colour temperatures are the same. So if you have a warm light and cool shadow in the background, make sure that there's a warm light and a cool shadow on your character as well. So after rendering for a little while, I felt like there was something a bit off about the composition, my character's quite big and in the foreground, and the background was just looking a little bit too small in comparison, so I started using the freeform warp tool and distort tool, and I ended up settling on something that I felt just matched the character a little bit better. I also felt that I had started to lose that sort of clean, crisp feeling that Ross gives to his backgrounds. Some of my shapes had become a little bit too undefined, so I brought it into a new canvas, merged everything down, put everything back onto a separate layer and started refining again. After mucking around for a little while and redefining those shapes, I was happy with it and decided to bring the character back. And the two did not quite match at all anymore. Like I said earlier, this was going to be an issue that I was aware of, so it was time to just start working on the character for a little bit and start making some changes so that the two could work harmoniously and not look like completely separate pieces just stuck together. Even though things changed vastly throughout this whole process, I still feel like I stayed true to my original idea. I still have my grassy field and my glowing rocks, and the whole purpose of this was to just learn how to get better at backgrounds so that I can start putting them behind my characters in my artwork. A lot of people are scared of backgrounds, including me, so if you're also one of those artists that finds backgrounds just that little bit daunting, I hope you found something in this video that inspires you to just try drawing some backgrounds, maybe add one to your next art piece. Let me know in the comments if you also find backgrounds just a little bit scary. Thank you for watching. Next week I'm going to try and have a little mini tutorial out on how I paint skin. So yeah, thank you, and until next time, bye!